Testing, testing. Okay. I'll deal with the rest afterwards.
We want no more segregation. We will accept no more discussion of segregation. And I would appreciate it if you would stop shaking your head in agreement when I don't think you understand what we are talking about.
I speak not for myself, but for those without voice can be heard. Those who have fought for their rights. Their right to live in peace.
Hello, and welcome to Rainbow Shelter News. This is Osmond the Dark here, and this is the strange week where I'm filming from a different place. But yeah, so. Oh, no, kitty. I mean, I guess into the news. So, we'll start off with the most upsetting stuff. Martasia Richmond. I forgot there was reminders or whatever here. Anyways, Martasia Richmond, a black trans woman, was murdered in Chicago, becoming the 20th trans person to have been violently killed in the U.S. this year that we know about. Because police don't always properly identify people who are trans. We can only know about so many. So the Chicago Police Department answered a domestic battery call, and she was found stabbed to death. Um, according to Trans G Riot, the Chicago Police Department officers canvassed the neighborhood only to be turned away by witnesses, with officers saying many were uncooperative to deal with. Police currently have no suspects, but are urging anyone who knows anything to come forward. Yeah, it's just... Some people are the worst. And it sucks. So, right through to California, and Gavin Newsom... Sorry, one moment, let me just do this a tinge. There we go. Anyways, Gavin Newsom pardons concentration camp survivor arrested for having gay sex. So, too long. This guy spent too much time in prison for having gay sex. He was charged in 1967, and he was pardoned recently. It's like, oh, you pardoned an 82-year-old Holocaust survivor who happened to be gay. And it's just, yes, this is a good thing, but also it feels superficial. Because, so, so, apparently Edmund Brown couldn't do it. Gray Davis couldn't do it. Arnold Schwarzenegger, it wouldn't surprise me, wouldn't want to. Pete Wilson's Republican, so especially wouldn't. Pete Wilson especially. Schwarzenegger's like the oddball Republican who actually sometimes does good things, but like, yeah. So Californians got several Republicans, but this could have happened earlier. Yeah, Edmund Jerry Brown was Democrat in this time period, in the 70s and 80s too. Like, this person could have been convicted, could have gotten out of, gotten pardoned. He was put in prison during Ronald Reagan, when Ronald Reagan was governor of California, and he wasn't pardoned by Edmund Brown. He wasn't, unsurprisingly, wasn't pardoned by George Dukeman or Pete Wilson. He wasn't pardoned by Gray Davis. He wasn't pardoned by Arnold Schwarzenegger. He wasn't pardoned by Edmund Brown. And he wasn't pardoned by Gavin Newsom until this year. 3 years into office, then there's a pardon. 3 years into office of this thing, but like, this person's been in prison since 1967. So, cool, it's good that he was pardoned, but fuck all y'all, because it happened way too fucking late. This should have happened so many years ago. So, Florida school acts as anti-LGBTQ bullying prevention measure because don't say gay law. Yeah, so it's because of the Florida law going on right now. It's very it's hard to prevent LGBTQ bullying. Fun fact. if you're not allowed to mention that LGBTQ people exist. How can people be bullied if clearly they don't exist? Yeah. So obviously, students in Florida district can no longer access a training video aimed at helping prevent anti-LGBTQ bullying, thanks to the recent law. Um, Video is designed for middle school and high school students, grades 6 through 12, but obviously DeSantis shut that down. So that's great. Georgia family speaks out after 4-year-old drowns during supervised swim lesson. So, like, the point of supervising a swim lesson is you don't you don't let people drown. That is the point. I thought that was the point. Am I wrong? Well, let me. I realized what some of the problem is. Like I said, I'm on a different computer, so let me just move this display capture around here. There we go. Yeah, it's like how so. Israel was found unresponsive in the pool during a swim lesson. An ambulance later transported him to Burke County Hospital, though the 4-year-old was pronounced dead. So, during a sit with the Shade Room, Israel they provide further details about the situation with this swim instructor, identified as Lexi Currington Tenhusen? Whatever. I went there and I got ready to sit down, and she was like, "Parents aren't allowed." This 4 and up class, Dory recalled, saying that she ultimately abided by this person's rule and waited in her car during the lesson. However, on Israel's second day of swim classes, things went horribly wrong. The lady comes and she knocks on my window. I'm sitting in the car and she's like, "Come get your baby." And when she said that, she said kind of rude like. Then I looked at her face and I just saw tears in her eyes. So initially I knew something was wrong. She continued, "I just started screaming." Adder called the harrowing moment when she laid eyes on her unresponsive son. So I saw some lady doing CPR on him. She said I lost it. But like how? Really, really atrocious behavior. She had a list of complaints from the region about her often being distracted, using her son as an employee who's not consistently on the premises, and not following the policy guidelines for supervising children, Merritt added. So there's a reputation in the community. So it sounds like this person is the worst swim teacher, whatever, ever. Wow. Okay, that would explain it, but dear God, a kid shouldn't have had to have died to have changes occur, but I hope changes do occur. I hope they crack down on stuff, cause that's BS. So, incarcerated man sues Kentucky prison for forcing him to cut his locks. This is part of an ongoing, continuous problem in the United States where any black person's hair is inherently considered unruly. If black people grow their hair naturally or put them in locks because it's easier or whatever, it's like a lot of the racist teachings in America, or the teachings with unintentional, sometimes racial biases, it's awful because everyone should be able to have their hair how they like it to some degree. Like, why? Oh, thanks, Ghost Anusagi. So, Warden Brown Adams issued a memo requiring the men in the all-male North Point Training Center in Kentucky to maintain quote-unquote searchable hair. Whatever that means. Locks can also be religious for some people, yes. Yes, Jinx Tiamat, that is also a factor, but they don't care about maintaining freedom of religion if it's not Christianity. So, braids, cornrows, dreadlocks, etc. are not permitted if they're not searchable, the memo stated. So, they decided to cut them out. If found in violation of the memo, prison officials would remove the hairstyle. Yeah, that seems like an easy loophole for prison guards to be assholes. Thurman said that he and others in the prison were subjected to racial discrimination in violation of their First and 14th Amendment rights. The ACLU alleges that Thurman was transferred to another complex as retribution, and prison officials proceeded to cut off his locks upon his arrival at the facility. The court affidavit further contends that the remnants of Thurman's hair were returned to him in a packed bag. That's just cruel. While my hair was being cut, NTC staff were laughing with each other while staring at me, even after, because of how my hair looked with the dreaded cut. This was humiliating, to say the least, Thurman penned in his correspondence to the Kentucky Department of Corrections Commissioner Cookie Cruz. Wow, that's a tongue twister, USA Today reports. Even though there's not an explicit racial discrimination claim in the complaint, I firmly believe that what happened is how prisons treat black men differently. Yeah, some places, well, I was going to say some places are the worst. Prison has so many problems, and black people get higher sentences, etc. So, University of Idaho. Law students allege professor and Christian students make them fear for their lives. The professor and students formed a prayer circle around queer students protesting around queer students protesting an anti-LGBTQ slur left in the classroom. The queer students say they have continued to harass them with help from a hate group. So, a student at the University of Idaho College of Law and her classmate are speaking out against anti-LGBTQ harassment, allegedly committed by student members of the Christian Legal Society at an on-campus LGBTQ community event. The university issued a no-contact order after Allen and other students say the CLS students' alleged speech and actions made them feel unsafe on campus. Now, Allen feels compelled to speak out after the CLS students, represented by the anti-LGBTQ legal group Alliance Defending Freedom, by taking away freedom, of course it's something like that, won a preliminary injunction rescinding the order. Of course it's rescinded. So the LGBTQ community event was organized in response to a derogatory slur directed against LGBTQIA+ community. Written on a classroom whiteboard, of the U of I's law school, the university's dean and professor of law, Johanna Kalb, wrote to students in Thursday, March 31st email. Breaks my heart that we struggle to be a place that respects the dignity and humanity of every person in our community, Kalb wrote. Kalb's email noted that in response to the slur, some of U of I faculty members would be holding a moment of community in front of the law school the next morning. Before the event, law professor Richard Seaman, worst last name ever, sent an email to students informing them that as faculty advisor to the CLS, he would be participating in a prayer circle in which all are welcome. The prayer circle would be held at the Moment of Community event, his email said. Allen considered this prayer circle a form of intimidation and compared it to a Pray the Gay Away event she attended with Matthew. Allen said about 23 students attended the Moment of Community and about 7 students assembled in the prayer circle. Prayer circle quickly formed around the students present. Nothing intimidating there. Nope. Nothing intimidating by a bunch of people circling people and just closing in on them. So Matthew, including Al and others who didn't want to participate, Matthew said she felt as if Christianity was being pushed onto everyone at the event, regardless of anyone else's religious beliefs, which felt like a disrespect to everyone else. Which, yeah. After the prayer concluded, Allen said she asked the CLS students why they came to support the LGBTQ community when the organization's website had statements opposing the LGBTQ rights. Matthews said that a student CLS member, Mark Miller, claimed that, quote unquote, the Bible says that same-sex marriage is wrong. Not in the Bible. Not even close. When Allen disagreed with Miller, Seaman allegedly remarked, it actually does say that in the Bible, even though it's nowhere in the Bible. After the alleged exchange, Matthew said that Miller began, quote-unquote, personally attacking Shelley for being a queer woman in a same-sex relationship with another woman. Mark had told Shelley that she would be going to hell and that she needed to repent for her sins, and called her a sinner multiple times, Matthew wrote in a statement given to LGBTQ Nation. He also called her a fornicator and said no fornicator can enter the divine kingdom of God. If you're that, if that's the case, like, why are we so pissed off about it? Matthew said that Ellen began to cry after personally attacking her for a sexual relationship and telling her multiple times that she would never go to heaven and that she needed to repent. Mark finally stopped, she added. Oh, I guess making people cry is the the line in the sand for stuff. Several students from CLS started preaching about how fornicators and sexuals would go to the gallows of hell as they recited Bible verses and that we need to repent for our sins. CLS members disagree with this version of events. CLS member, said that they simply cited the Bible as the basis of their beliefs and offered to discuss the issue more in depth later time. Yeah, they always say, "Oh, we're being so nice. We're being so nice and considerate," and then you see tons of videos of them like shouting at people. I'm so sorry that what was meant to be an opportunity to provide support and healing to our students turned out the way it did. Yeah. Yeah, I think we can all agree this is utter awful BS. Trans colleagues have been continuously misgendered by students in the CLS and by a professor, though she didn't name the professor or students allegedly involved. She said that in the fall, another colleague was assaulted and called an F slur by a CLS member. Iowa Library, because we're not done with Iowa, closed after endless complaints about LGBTQ staff and theft of books. So, two previous directors quit due to theft of LGBTQ books and lack of support from the community. Wait, lack of support in Iowa after what we just after what I just read? No, what? Iowa Library will reopen for limited hours of operation after a temporary closing due to ceaseless community complaints over LGBTQ books and staff members during the ongoing national debate over content in libraries and schools. It's less so a debate and one group of people complaining endlessly. Well, a few groups of people complaining endlessly that are incredibly conservative. Over the past 2 years, the Vinton Public Library has seen two library directors leave their positions after facing criticism for pride displays and other books that some in the community consider inappropriate or overly partisan. Yeah, they can make anything a partisan issue. In early July, the library was forced to close after the departure of an out gay interim director, Colton Neely, who had taken over in June. The library will reopen Monday for limited hours with help of part-time staff. Some residents of Vinton, a small town northeast of Des Moines, accused the library of enacting a liberal agenda, the dreaded liberal agenda of people having rights. How dare people have rights? And displaying LGBT due to hiring openly LGBTQ staff and displaying LGBTQ books. I.e., I don't want to see it, so yeah. Anyways, according to Iowa independent newspaper The Gazette, previous directors also faced criticism that library collections included books about President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, and not enough books about former President Donald Trump. That yeah, no. At a meeting in March, Vinton resident Brick Krukenberg argued that it appears that there's a slow, quiet agenda moving into our local library culture through the staff hiring decisions and the books that have crept into our children's sections of the library. I don't believe the library is representing our town well with hiring a majority of staff who are openly a part of the LGBTQ community. Yeah, that's not a library's job. A library's job is to hire people who want to work there. And also that creeping agenda is known as time. Time passes, and people's views differ, and slowly over time, people's views become different views. That's not a creeping agenda. That's people's views changing. That's time passing. You can't force time to stop in the 18th century or whatever. When the Constitution was written. Neely, who is gay, is just the latest Vinton library employee to resign in the face of controversy. Jeanette McMahon, who left her position library director in 2021, said that not everyone was as supportive as others when the library needed to stand up for inclusion and diversity in its materials. During her tenure, people would check out books they found objectionable and simply not return them, which is theft of materials, she said. We know the folks had them out, had been making complaints to other city officials and people around me without going through an actual process. So, The situation was so bad, that person left entirely. When I had enough, we couldn't function correctly as a library, so I decided to find a community that better fit me as a librarian and my standards for library ethics. Another person faced similar backlash during her 6 months as library director following McMahon's departure. Neely struck a note of optimism in June. I think we got over a mountain of people accusing everyone on the staff for being on a liberal agenda, he said at the time. But while he considered applying for a director position, he opted instead to leave the library altogether due to the pressure he and his partner were facing. He says the vitriol wore him down. I felt like nobody was really giving me that support. And there's the importance of support and working together. This is where allies face less of the pressure than anyone LGBTQ. So ideally, if someone took the scary stance of being an ally, that would have helped, or at the very least more people. So, 3 people killed in Indiana mall shooting. Gunman fatally shot by civilian. Gunman opened fire at Greenwood Park Mall in Indiana Sunday, killing 3 and wounding 2 others, New York Times reports. Greenwood Police Chief Jim Eisen said they started to receive calls regarding a shooting in the food court of the mall around 6 p.m. The suspect, who has only been described as an adult male, entered the mall with a rifle and several magazines of ammunition. He was fatally shot by an armed civilian. The motive for the shooting has yet to be determined. Witnesses told WTHR they heard 20 gunshots fired, while Indiana Metropolitan Police said the incident contained to the food cart. Eisen noted a quote-unquote suspicious backpack was left in the mall bathroom and has since been recovered. A mass shooting in America? Who knew? So this one, you have to be certain levels of butthurt to be upset about this. So Montana Library Commission rejects logo because it looks too much like a rainbow flag. Next thing you'll hear people boycotting rainbows, being like, I've set up the air around my place to get rid of the right moisture. Just dry it out to try to prevent rainbows, deadly rainbows. One commissioner suggested making the logo straighter by making it shades of black and gray. Like, if that's a proposed logo, it's just some colors. It's just a red, orange, green, blue, and black, and dark blue. Light blue and dark blue. That's it. And, like, if anything, it looks more like a sports logo. Well, at the very least, I feel like I've seen sports logos like that. It's kind of silly. The hexagon is a black triangle on the left and 4 more colorful triangles on the right. Red, yellow, dark yellow maybe? I don't know. Green and blue representing a prism. Oh! I totally see that. The prism represented information being trumped forward, according to the AP. I think there are 2 things you can say today to set off a firestorm in the area of information, said Commissioner Tammy Hall. One is rainbow and one is misinformation. Those are very political, explosive weapons. the advertising agency which created the logo said that they were also worried that people would think the logo is pride symbol, and that's why they made the colors more muted to avoid suggestion of it being some sort of pride mark. Apparently not muted enough. They need it like full black and white. Yeah, it doesn't run LGBTQ, not enough colors or that layout. Yeah, no, it definitely doesn't, but like apparently the colors weren't muted enough. They needed the colors like completely black and white and gray. You know, get rid of all the color. Why have color and art and beauty? We need to keep stuff nice and straight, nice and black and white. But yeah, so hello, the amazing wolf skeptic. How are you? I'm doing all right. So, quick question. I'm new here. Okay. What's your question? Where so you identify politically? I would identify as left wing politically because as far as because on an ethical perspective, I believe in causing the least harm, and I don't believe, based off of the information that is currently available in society and that experts have, I don't believe that conservative movements. Am I a socialist? I mean, that would be a nice socialism would be a nice end goal, but if we're talking about right this second, I care more about just trying to address the right now to try to reduce suffering. That would be ideal because there's genuine suffering all across America, all across the world, and the first thing you need to do is know about the suffering and the problems, and the second thing you need to do is try to do what you can to address them, whether it be organizing with the people around you. Like if you live in an apartment, just try to be friends with neighbors. Try to just knowing your neighbors. There's been studies about knowing your neighbors because people are less likely to want to steal from someone who knows who everyone is, and it also makes it harder for a variety of crime, and through that you can have a better idea of what's going on in the world. So, but in terms of all the aspects of what makes an ideal version of a country, I don't know enough of enough aspects of how to best prevent um, corruption. So I need to do more anti-corruption research to have a better idea of the of when it comes to more specific labels. So if we're talking about right this second, I think a lot of mutualism would be helpful. But in terms of, I think at some point, if you go far enough down a road, that I think socialism does end up putting people in a position with the least suffering. Will that get rid of money entirely? I don't know. That's so far off into the future. I don't have any way of assessing that sort of outcome. especially because money as a concept is used to money as a concept is used instead of just general trading. So if we're talking about far off things, I would prefer not to make any far off judgment. But given that the Democratic Party is pretty much center right and the Republican Party is far right in my mind, I personally am a fan of the left wing, but that doesn't change the reality of what's going on right now. And I think action outside of just voting is required to make real change. There needs to be protests, letters, etc. Like all this stuff needs to occur for there to be real change. It's just Republicans are actively fighting against me, and Democrats will watch me die. Is my general attitude towards the two parties in America that have any sort of power. So it's always a complicated thing with stuff. This is why I'm also very much against authoritarianism, because authoritarianism is the easiest way for me to get myself killed. And I also, doing left-wing stuff properly involves trying to listen to marginalized groups, because the people most negatively affected, chances are, know where all the flaws are in the system you have. Not to say that every person's opinion is correct. It's a whole complicated thing. Does that answer your question? I feel like I rambled on a little bit, but yeah. So yeah, it does. Okay. Cool. So LGBTQ advocates in Montana are not amused by State Library Commission's anti-LGBTQ sentiment. If you're gonna have a problem with the logo, the first thing you think of, oh, it's got bright colors, and that's a little too queer for me. You're a bigot and you have issues, said Montana Pride President Kevin Ham. Don't throw my community under the bus just because all of a sudden rainbows make you think everything's gay. In other news, New Mexico teen dies of smoke inhalation during SWAT standoff. They let him die and burn, is the quote they left. So 15-year-old Brett Rosenau lost his life as authorities attempted to take a 27-year-old man to custody. So this is a problem. I'm assuming tear gas. Let me read a little bit further, because it wouldn't surprise me if they're using tear gas, which is chemical warfare, effectively, which occurs far too much against civilians, because of course it does. So a recent standoff in Albuquerque, New Mexico, has resulted in the death of a young black teen, forever changing a family's life, leaving the community with unanswered questions. So they tracked down a 27-year-old man the police department tracked down a 27-year-old man who has won at least 2 warrants. But another person, a couple people were visiting so-and-so's son when authorities barged in and ordered everyone out of the home. However, Kelly and the person accompanying him proceeded to re-enter the house, initiating a standoff that lasted several hours. Then authorities started pulling off the windows. They started removing doors. They had a machine that ripped up the tree, and then they started throwing gas bombs in there. Fields told Albuquerque Journal, noting that the whole house went up in flames. So I know. I know it's a shock with the police. So the goal is to make it uncomfortable for the subject and propel the subject to come out peacefully. APD Sergeant Michael Jones said of the projectiles, which included tear gas and noise flash divisionary devices. So the noise flash was likely. It wouldn't surprise me if the noise flash started the fire. If there's enough flammable material, definitely tear gas should not be used in general. It's problem. It's a major problem that's used even now, anyways. So, a fire allegedly broke out over an hour after these projectiles were thrown into the residence. As the fire was being extinguished from outside, Kelly ultimately exited the home and was taken into custody around 3 a.m. Upon entering the residence shortly thereafter, firefighters discovered the body of a juvenile man who was later identified as 15-year-old Brett Rosenau and died result of smoke inhalation. So many problems with this, but ultimately protests occurred, and the thing is that there needs to be a better way of doing this. We need specialists in taking down a dangerous person, but we also need people to the majority of what happens in policing needs to occur with people who are just knowledgeable about psychological stuff, knowledgeable about whatever it is the task that's been now shoved on the police. And the police are only given the power or given the training to do violent actions, which does not help. So, Buffalo shooting suspect pleads not guilty to hate crime charges. U.S. authorities say suspect charged with killing 10 black people at grocery shop was motivated by hate and white supremacy. Because he shot up a black grocery shop. I know this is a shock, but generally if you target a black neighborhood and shoot it up and just randomly shoot black people, generally people think that it might be because of white supremacy. So, the man charged with killing 10 black people in a racist mass shooting at a grocery shop in Buffalo in the U.S. state of New York has pleaded not guilty to federal hate crime charges. Suspected attacker Peyton Gendron's lawyer entered the plea on Monday in the Buffalo courtroom of U.S. Magistrate Judge Kenneth Schroeder and said she hopes to resolve the case before the trial begins. We all know he's guilty. We saw what he did. Zanita Everhart, whose son Zaire Goodman was wounded in the May 14th shooting spree, said following on Monday's hearing, the world saw what he did. He posted what he did. The deadly attack at Tops Friendly supermarket in a predominantly black neighborhood of Buffalo drew condemnation across the U.S. and spurred calls for action to tackle white supremacist violence. Authorities say Gendron drove 3 hours from Conklin, New York, and chose the shop in the predominantly black area because he wanted to kill as many black people as possible. They also said he had described his white supremacist beliefs in diary entries online. So he said what he was going to do, and he did it. And, yeah. 13 counts of using a firearm in a hate crime. The federal indictment includes 10 counts of hate crimes resulting in death, 3 counts of hate crimes involving an attempt to kill 3 people, and another hate crime alleging Gendron, clad in body armor and tactical gear, tried to kill other black people in and around the shop. uh, domestic terrorism charges. Yeah, so he's basically pleaded not guilty to all the charges. Um, which I don't think I don't think that's gonna be I don't think that's gonna work. Not with federal indictment charges. That's just me. So, medical aid in dying. States debate right to die laws. So, if you aren't aware, on my stance of right to die laws, good in concept, terrible in practice. So, I don't think. I think people should have bodily autonomy and all this stuff, but we have a lot of cultural aspects which pressure people who are disabled into accepting right to die type stuff, despite them not being in tons and tons of pain and all that stuff. So, yeah. So, on spring morning in Albany, New York, a group of people gathered at the Capitol to share poignant stories of grief and suffering. They lit candles and read aloud names of 22 people who've lost their lives while waiting for their cause to be heard. Right, the right to die, quote unquote, with dignity. Um, not dead yet. Yeah, so like, uh, New York is one of several states where lawmakers have introduced bills to legalize medical aid in dying, which allows doctors to prescribe lethal medication to terminal mentally competent patients with a prognosis of 6 months or less to live, if they ask for it. It's currently legal in 10 states and Washington, D.C. That, so if and only if it only stuck to stuff like that, it wouldn't necessarily be a problem. The problem is a lot of human culture, there's a lot of laws that like this which have been broadened more and more after, like, it starts out like something like this, and then it ends up somewhere like in Canada where there's a law being introduced to allow anyone who's um, mentally ill to be, like, if someone is mentally ill, that's enough reason for them to accept this or apply for assisted suicide. And that is very eugenics, because a lot of society pressures people not to live. So, like, and what counts as mental illness changes. So, proponents say these laws allow people to end their lives on their own terms without the drug-resistant physical and emotional suffering that comes with a terminal illness. Opponents argue it's a policy with little or no oversight that can lead to coercion from caregivers and even outright abuse of people who are terminally ill. Yes, but also it's something that can be used that in a lot of places gets slowly broadened. Once people are fine with terminally ill, then if you're disabled, if you got a lifetime disability, then it becomes, like I said, mental illness in Canada. I know there's a story I read like last week or the week before from a Canadian news source. Anyways, my son was 14 years old. Ron said in an interview with Fox Television Stations, I was really terrified of not just leaving my son, but having him have memories of me dying. Stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. Yeah. So this. So they're going with the case for it, which I totally get. So. If someone's diagnosed with cancer but declines chemotherapy, should a doctor help them die? Should be, I mean, that. I mean, if they want it. Autism is grounds to deny immigration in some countries, yeah. People suffering from mental illness like anorexia nervosa should people suffering from mental illness like anorexia nervosa be able to end their lives with a prescription? They grant broad immunities to doctors and others involved. The only real data is reported by the prescribing doctor. There's no meaningful oversight. The American Medical Association has debated the issue in recent years and hasn't changed its stance that ultimately it does more harm than good. That 6 months or less is a prognosis. It's a best guess by physicians, and those physicians will readily admit that's not a hard and fast thing. They're not very good at prognostication. But yeah, if if people are put in a position where that's so bad that death looks like the best way out, and it has nothing to do with the medical thing. The things that cause them problems are stuff relating to, I don't know, improperly fitted wheelchairs, improper medication or diagnosis. Like, there's so many things that can, the overall the lack of accessibility in society, the lack of the shame that's put on people for being disabled. It does not help when it comes to trying to if no, they suck at prognostication. Yes, that's effectively what that person said. But yeah, it's a frustrating thing. All of this is frustrating, because there are so many other factors which make it far too easy with society in its current state for there to be that to be abused. Man sleeping on Coney Island beach hit and killed by New York City Parks and Department cleaning truck. So actually, this is not really important. I don't know why I was. This was one of the ones I should have weeded out. Let's just go with the funnier article. New York City women charged after violently attacking fast food employees over dipping sauce fee. Paying less than $2 for extra dipping sauce seems to be the last straw for 3 New Yorkers who proceeded to trash the establishment and attack its employees. The ordeal recently unfolded at French fry joint called Belle Fries, located in Manhattan's Lower East Side. The video footage of the attack shows the three women trashing the establishment after refusing to pay $1.75 for extra sauce. Two of my employees were hit on the head with glass bottles. Was at the establishment. It's a nightmare, honestly. There's something going on with them, and didn't have to do with us, because it was over sauce. That shouldn't call for this kind of behavior. Additionally, the video shows there are many bystanders who, instead of interfering, cheered on and encouraged the assailants during their rampage. Ableism. The assailants were in their 20s and ultimately arrested by Chitara Placencia, basically people. Insurance killed this author and professor. Back in 2017, question about why do our disabled civil rights leaders keep dying due to insurance denials? What's that about? Yeah, that. So, yeah, they face legal ramifications, all that stuff. It was $1.75. Come on. So, cops shot Jalen Walker dozens of times, reports show. So Jalen Walker, the 25-year-old black man shot by police in Akron, Ohio, was shot dozens of times, according to a preliminary autopsy report released Friday by the medical examiner's office in Summit County. The preliminary autopsy revealed that U.S. police shot unarmed Jalen Walker 46 times. 46! Police in Uvalde can't shoot an armed person once. I mean, they don't want to shoot armed people. They only want to shoot unarmed people. It's easier. Summit County Medical Examiner Dr. Lisa Kohler said her office could not determine which bullet caused the death of Walker or how many shots were fired. Walker had very devastating injuries that would cause death, including damages to his heart, lungs, and arteries. Added that Walker had 5 wounds caused by bullets grazing his body, and calculated there were 41 entry wounds. Medical examiner could not conclude if the 5 wounds in Walker's back resulted from him running away or turning towards the gunfire. Honestly, with that many shots fired, don't care. Oh, the Summit County Communications Director said Friday it was plausible that one bullet could be the source of various entry wounds, the Washington Post reports. After a police pursuit, authorities said that Walker discharged a weapon from his vehicle. The medical examiner confirmed that Walker was unarmed when police officers shot him, and there were no traces of drugs or alcohol in his system. Cease came to brutal, senseless death. NAACP pleaded with Attorney General Merrick Garland demanding that the Justice Department file a federal civil rights investigation into the shooting death of Walker. Police doing police stuff. So, on to Marjorie Taylor Greene. So, Twitter refuses to remove hateful Marjorie Taylor Greene tweets. I know this is a shock. They complain that they can't have all the tweets, including insurrection tweets, but apparently, yeah. So Marjorie Taylor Greene sent a malicious transphobic tweet that clearly violated the company's policy. After putting only a warning label on the tweet, Twitter has drawn harsh criticism for not taking it down, with the company citing the public interest in keeping it live. As she continued her crusade against people different from her, the congresswoman, who is openly hostile to the LGBTQ community, showed no qualms about being transphobic. I know this is a shock with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Miss secret Jewish laser beams cause forest fires in California. So, apropos of nothing, she tweeted a video clip showing Dr. Rachel Levine, the Assistant Secretary for the Health Department, or for the Department of Health and Human Services, in addition to being a 4-star admiral for the Commissioned Corps of Public Health Service. Levine is the first out trans person to be confirmed by Senate. Greene used a double entendre while dead-naming Dr. Levine and made lewd references to gender-affirming surgery, arguing that the Assistant Secretary for Health was pushing a quote-unquote preteen weenie chop. Greene's tweet was intentional disinformation about gender-confirming procedures for minors, as they are not available in the U.S. to anyone under 18. And no medical organizations or trans organizations recommend that sort of surgery until adulthood. Greene still had access to her account shortly before 6 p.m. She retweeted the previous offensive tweet, challenged Twitter for placing a label on it, and and again attacked trans individuals. So the tweet you referenced violated Twitter rules for hateful comment. Twitter said when Axios reached the site for a comment. However, we've determined that may be in the public's interest for the tweet to remain accessible and has been labeled in line with our policies. It's not clear how attacking someone personally could be in the public interest. GLAAD condemned Greene for her online hate speech. This account has repeatedly and intentionally violated Twitter's hateful conduct guidelines. This is sort of like how Twitter doesn't really block, or Twitter does block anti-Nazi content because, Twitter doesn't block neo-Nazi content because they would end up blocking some Republican senators, and they don't want to block people in Congress or something. Instead of removing harassment, site labels it when elected officials violate the terms of service. You can only view the tweet by clicking on the warning. She probably would have been suspended if she had been a regular user. Despite a ban on Greene's personal Twitter account, her government account remains active. Yeah, that's generally what Twitter does. It doesn't want to do that. So, LeBron James criticizes U.S. efforts to bring Brittany Griner home. So LeBron James has commented on WNBA star Brittany Griner's detention in Russia, asking, "How can she feel like America has her back?" Um, request for home detention has been denied, and she pleaded guilty to drug charges or whatever. In a trailer for the latest episode of his YouTube talk show, The Shop Interrupted, James criticized U.S. efforts to help Griner. He said that if he were in her shoes, I would be feeling like, do I even want to go back to America? James clarified his comments in a tweet on Tuesday, writing, "My comments on the shop regarding Brittany Griner wasn't knocking our beautiful country. I was simply saying how she's probably feeling emotionally along with so many other emotions, thoughts, etc. inside that cage she's been in for over 100+ days. Long story short, bring her home." Joe Biden has assured her wife that he is pursuing her release, but the only reason he's pursuing it probably is because of the amount of backlash currently. WNBA coach Vanessa Nygaard told reporters on July 5th that U.S. ambassadors would have acted a lot quicker if it was LeBron who had been detained in Russia. She said, "It's a statement about the value of women, or whatever. It's a statement about the value of a black person. It's a statement about the value of a gay person." So, yeah, no, she needs to be freed from Russia. This is BS. So, LeBron James partners with Life WTR to champion underrepresented communities. So, LeBron James entered a multi-year partnership with. Oh, okay. He entered a water partnership. I see how it is. So he did it to get more money for the LeBron James Family Foundation. But yeah, he does probably not do enough, but that's beside the point. Post row. Many autoimmune patients lose access to quote-unquote gold standard drug. 6 days after Supreme Court struck down the right to abortion, lupus patient Becky Schwartz, German, anyway, got an unexpected message from her rheumatologist. "This is a notice to let you know that we're pausing all prescriptions and subsequent refills of methotrexate," the message read. "This decision has been made in response to the reversal of Roe v. Wade." Schwartz was stunned. Methotrexate is a cheap, common drug prescribed to millions of Americans. Like her, many have rheumatic illnesses. Others take it to treat inflammatory bowel disease, psoriasis, or cancer. Yet few are aware that it is used off-label to end ectopic pregnancies, or that could be restricted by doctors or pharmacists even in states like Virginia that do not ban abortion. Reasons are numerous and muddy. In Texas, dispensing methotrexate to someone who uses it to induce a miscarriage after 49 days of gestation is a felony. Fuck Texas. Anyway, that makes pharmacists hesitant to fill such prescriptions for almost anyone with a uterus. A new total ban on abortion in Tennessee will effectively criminalize any medication that could disrupt pregnancy past the point of fertilization, with strict exceptions for a patient who will otherwise die. And in Virginia, confusion over rules about who is permitted to prescribe drugs drugs qualified as abortifacients may be blocking access to the medication. Yeah, methotrexate is often basic in autoimmune care. Yeah, it's. That's what was shocking to me, said Schwartz, a 27-year-old who lives in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. In a state where I thought I was relatively protected regardless of what the Supreme Court decided, I found out I wasn't. Yeah. Yeah. That is what happens. That is no. The Supreme Court decisions affect so much. It's not. I just. Anyways, I'm just reminded of how much I'm pissed off at someone in Minnesota saying like almost the same thing about I assume I'm safe or whatever. Anyways, fake cop allegedly attacked gay and bi men with a chemical. Michael Thomas Prudence allegedly shined a light into his victim's eyes and shouted police-style orders at them, then attacked with a chemical. Man allegedly pretended to be a police officer so that he could order gay and bi men around a park at a park and then spray them with a chemical, according to the Justice Department. A federal grand jury has indicted Michael Thomas Pruden, 48, of Virginia, with 5 counts of assault on federal land, 1 count of impersonating a federal officer, and a hate crime sentencing harassment due to alleged anti-gay bias. The indictment says that Pruden attacked 4 of his victims because of their real or perceived sexual orientation. He could get up to 10 years in jail for each assault charge and 3 years for impersonating a federal officer. Sentence could be even longer if the hate crimes enhancement is applied. This isn't the first time he's been accused of impersonating an officer in order to attack people. He was acquitted by a jury last year for terrible reasons, I'm sure. So, in brighter news, I guess, kind of brighter news, a statue of Mary McLeod Bethan, terrible with names sometimes, unveiled in U.S. Capitol. This person continues to shake up the world posthumously. A statue of the educator was unveiled in the National Statuary Hall on Wednesday, making it the first depicting a black American in the hall's collection. In the hall's collection. My bad. This person was a civil rights activist, presidential advisor, humanitarian, and philanthropist who founded the Daytona Library and Industrial Training School for black girls, which later became the Bethune-Cookman University in Daytona Beach, Florida. Bethan's statue now sits in the National Statuary Hall to honor her as a distinguished citizen of Florida. MMCB is a big deal. I mean, yeah. In 2018, state law was signed by then Governor Rick Scott that resulted in the removal of the Smith statue in 2021. in spite of obstacles, and she had them not only because she was a woman, but because she was black, but she never allowed any of those obstacles to prevent her from what her greater decision and desire was, Grimes said, and that was to build this school. Statues of other noteworthy black leaders, including Frederick Douglass, Rosa Parks, and busts of Martin Luther King Jr. and Sojourner Truth, are in the Capitol building, the Post reports. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Which is why going immediately depressing. Can't have awesome. Everything needs to be depressing. No, I'm kidding. But like seriously, this is restraint and seclusion and disability rights. Education department work to do, audit fines. Fun fact, there's plenty of audits that have labeled the concentration camps, I mean internment camps we have towards immigrants as being being torturous, and feeding moldy food and like all this horrible stuff, but like nothing has been done. So the U.S. Department of Education should increase its attention on preventing the underreporting of restraint and seclusion problems involving students, ensuring parents understand special education rights, and helping states provide more transparency on charter school management organizations, says the Government Accountability Office. So the first recommendation would have the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights identify the factors that led to misreporting and underreporting of students who are restrained or secluded in school. The Education Department agreed with the recommendation and has already committed to evaluating and analyzing trend data from past civil rights data collections to identify the causes of underreporting and misreporting according to the report. So they're doing a investigation to identify a problem by looking at a bunch of old papers. I mean, you could send people to gather information more directly. Instead of just looking at old trend data. So GAO believes the department should go farther by working directly with school districts. During the 2017 to 2018 school year, the most recent year of data available, 990 U.S. students were subjected to restraint or seclusion, according to the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights. That's a lot. That's a bit too many to be like, oh, well, I guess we'll look over the data and see what might be the cause. Until the Education Department more fully understands why so many school districts are underreporting or misreporting federal restraint and seclusion data, it will likely not be able to help districts improve their reporting, thereby improving the accuracy and utility of the data, the report says. So, like, yeah, you need to do direct investigation. But anyways, the GAO report also recommends the department work to combat misinformation regarding special education rights. Specifically, the department should ensure that parents understand changes in federal special education law when they place their students with their disabled students in private schools. The GAO's final recommendation targets states' underreporting of information on management organization that contract with charter schools, especially virtual charter schools. In order to receive federal funding, charter schools have to divulge if they contract with for-profit organizations, but only 16 states have laws requiring charter schools to prove they aren't run by a for-profit company, according to a January 2020 study from the Education Commission of the States, an education policy and research organization. So, without improving data quality, the department won't be able to mitigate elevated financial and programmatic risks that arise with charter schools, the report said. The GAO report also gave an update on past education department priorities. Since June 2021, for example, the department took steps to regularly collect and report information on state and school district spending of COVID-19 relief funds. It also fulfilled 2 recommendations to improve restraint and seclusion data by developing business rules that target school districts that report both very low and very high instance of restraint and seclusion, according to the GAO. As of May 2022, spoilers, it's likely understaffing and failure to implement IEP and policy, yeah. Wait, what does IEP stand for again? You can go ahead and type that out when you're ready. Anyways, as of May 2022, the department had 60 unfulfilled GAO recommendations, the report said. Those recommendations include an updated review of school cybersecurity threats and efforts to improve low-performing teacher preparation programs. Yeah, it is likely due to understaffing and all that. So, Amelia Clark famously suffered from 2 brain aneurysms while filming Game of Thrones in 2021 and 2011 and 2013. I almost said 2021 and 2023. That would be wrong. 2011 and 2013. And it's not startling news. Apparently she had undergone several surgeries. Individualized education plan. Thank you. Anyways, she said, the amount of my brain that is no longer usable it's remarkable. I'm able to speak, sometimes articulately, and live my life completely normally with absolutely no repercussions, she added. I am in the really, 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 really small minority that of people that can survive that. She also commented on her brain scan saying, there's quite a bit missing, which always makes me laugh because strokes basically, as soon as any part of your brain doesn't get any blood for a second, it's gone. And so blood finds a different route to get around, but whatever bit it's missing is therefore gone. Following the aneurysm, she suffered from aphasia. At one point, Clark couldn't remember her own name. Yeah, it's definitely affected you, Amelia Clark, and but like I think this is the problem, that this is considered by far too much something to shame people about. And that shouldn't be the case. And I think people, the brain has a lot of backup aspects to it. I think people overestimate the importance of having a big brain. A lot of what big brains do is they provide a lot of motor function at best. So, LGBTQ activists are already preparing for SCOTUS potentially overturning marriage equality. Yeah, and I assume sodomy laws as well. So, I mean, yeah. So, the Justice Clarence Thomas explicit call for the court to reconsider Obergefell v. Hodges. LGBTQ activists are already preparing for SCOTUS to end the constitutional right to same-sex marriage because, yeah, they said they were going to do it. Believe me, all the LGBTQ legal and advocacy groups are on alert, says National Center for Lesbian Rights legal director Shannon Minter. Though there's no immediate threat to marriage equality on the horizon, LGBTQ advocates are on high alert. I disagree. That is an immediate threat. I'm sorry. What do you mean there's no immediate threat on the horizon? Yeah, I would say, yeah, the justice is saying that they're probably going to try to get rid of marriage equality. That does sound like an immediate threat. I mean, oh, okay. If we're talking about in the next month, sure, that it won't happen, but feels immediate. Because it might be within the year, for all I know. We've seen reports of massive calls to state planning attorneys, people who are specialized in LGBTQ law, seeking an uptick in consultations. Earlier this month, Lambda Legal, GLAD, the National Center for Lesbian Rights, and the Trans Law Center issued a call to expand the Supreme Court and introduce a code of ethics for justices. And a public hearing before the House Judiciary Committee, billed as, quote-unquote, the threat to individual freedom in a post-Roe world, has been scheduled for July 14th. So that was 5 days ago. We know from history that you're never done working, you're never done persuading, you're never done building on what you've done. Yeah, it's just this is a problem. This is a genuine major problem. U.S. lawmakers denounce blacklisting of Palestinian NGOs by Israel. So there's 6 Palestinian human rights organizations who are being labeled by Israel as terrorist groups. In a letter to the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines on Monday, 21 members of Congress, all Democrats, decried the absence of available evidence backing the Israeli allegations against Palestinian organizations. The U.S. must always and consistently speak out against efforts by all countries to undermine civil society and the necessary work of humanitarian organizations. Counterterrorism legislation must not be applied to legitimate human rights and humanitarian activities, the letter piloted by Progressive Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley reads. Furthermore, repressive tactics such as criminalizing organizations must not be used to suppress or deny the right to freedom of association or to quash political dissent or limit the peaceful activities of a civil society. Israel blacklisted the 6 leading Palestinian human rights and civil society organizations in October 2021 over alleged links to the Popular Front or the Liberation of Palestine political faction. The order by the Israeli Defense Ministry practically outlawed Al-Haq Defense for Children International Palestine, the Bison Center for Research and Development, the Union of Palestinian Women's Committees, the Union of Agricultural Work Committees, and Adamir. These groups work directly with Palestinian women and girls, children, low-income families, prisoners, and civil society activists, providing direct services and monitoring human rights abuses by both Israeli and Palestinian authorities, the U.S. legislators said on Monday. The letter requested a briefing from the Biden administration officials with the signatories to discuss the designation of the purported evidence that Israel said it provided to Washington to justify the blacklisting of the groups. Evidence justifying this designation has not been provided publicly to all members of Congress despite multiple requests, it said. We urge you to publicly reject this decision, to call on the Israeli government to reverse course, confirm a date for an interagency briefing with below signatories, and provide a report to Congress on your effort within 30 days. Over the past months, numerous international bodies and foreign governments have denounced the Israeli move, but Washington has yet to articulate a clear position for whether it believes the blacklisting was justified. Yeah, and this is a problem with the United States in terms of so the Christian fascist organizations need Israel to exist, regardless of what the majority of Jewish people say in America. Because the majority of Jewish people are not Orthodox. So, when it comes to darker skin, pulse oximeters fall short. Over the past 2 years, the pulse oximeter has become a crucial tool for tracking the health of COVID patients. The small device clips onto a finger, measures the amount of oxygen in a patient's blood, but a growing body of evidence shows the device can be inaccurate when measuring oxygen levels in people with dark skin tones. A study published on Monday only adds to this concern, because as most medical devices are set up with the assumption that white men are the ones using them. Oximeters or oximeters. Anyways, we were fooled by the pulse oximeter, the study researchers analyzing pre-pandemic health data also finds those measurements resulted in patients of color receiving less supplemental oxygen than white patients did. We were fooled by the pulse oximeter, says the study's lead author, Dr. Leo Anthony Selly, who's clinical research director and principal research scientist at the MIT Laboratory of Computational Physiology. We were given false impression that the patients were okay, and what we showed in this study is that we were giving them less oxygen than they needed, he says. These sobering findings bring more urgency to educating patients and medical professionals about the shortcomings of the pulse oximeter. And to designating new models that can work reliably regardless of someone's skin color. Yeah, that's just a problem with almost any medical related stuff. So, U.S. report finds a rise in anti-Hindu disinformation. So, a U.S. researcher from Rutgers University in the latest report have said that there's been a substantial increase in anti-Hindu disinformation on social media and messaging services, according to experts. The investigation revealed that over the past few years, hate speech against the Hindu community has grown mostly unnoticed on social media. White nationalist and 4chan genocidal Pepe memes about Hindus are widely disseminated via extreme Islamist web networks messaging at it's Telegram. Telegram is used by everyone. It's not just the far right, but whatever. And elsewhere, according to the study, anti-Hindu disinformation, a case of study of Hindu phobia. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me given what some of India is not the best. So I can see how you can end up with anti-Indian hate. I might have to get rid of that website for news because I'm starting to feel like they might not be the best news source. LeBron James explains his issues with Celtic fans. They're racist as So, LeBron James did not hesitate to call it Celtic fans. They will say anything and it's fine, he said, referring to Celtic fans. I mean, fuck, it's my life. I've been dealing with it my whole life, and I don't mind. Like, if I hear someone close by, I'll check them real quick and then move on to the game. They're going to say whatever the fuck they want to say. They might throw something at you. James recalled a time when Celtic fans poured a drink on him as he made his way to the locker room. Got beer thrown at him. So it sounds like, there's a really awful, British soccer team. I can't remember which one. Sounds like something like that. So, they call themselves the Celtics. So 8 commonly held beliefs about disabled people debunked as mere myths. So this is, I just kind of wanted to go over this because, like, it's a problem. So, disability is a one-size-fits-all expression. It should go without saying that disability encapsulates an incredibly wide range of stuff. So to expect every single person who identifies as disabled to look, behave, and need support in the same ways is nonsensical. Disability looks different from one person to the next, whether that is mobility issues, chronic pain, neurodivergence, and so forth. There's no right or wrong way to be disabled, and it's illogical to pretend that there is. Yeah. Quote-unquote high-functioning and quote-unquote productive disabled people do not suffer as much. This is shock. People don't always talk about every aspect of what's upsetting them because they have to live in society. Anyways, chronic conditions and disabilities can fluctuate in severity. A person's work ethic and capabilities for productivity are not an accurate indicator for the severity of their situation. We just become accustomed to which routines work for us. Yeah. Disability aids are an invitation to ask someone's medical history. Oh God, yeah, they are not. They are definitely not. Do not do that. Whether it's mobility aids, prosthetic rims, or nebulizers, or transitioning, you are not entitled to a person's medical history, no matter how close you are to them. Curiosity is human nature, but cornering a person to pester them about what's quote-unquote wrong with them is rude and hostile, whether they're a stranger or someone familiar to you. These conversations should only take place when instigated by the individuals themselves, or if they have expressed on multiple occasions that they're fine generally talking about it. Disabled toilets are for wheelchair users only. This belief largely stems from the misconception disability is equivocal with wheelchair use. Many hidden conditions necessitate the use of disabled bathrooms, and this is not something that should be questioned or interrogated. If a person uses these bathrooms but does not, quote-unquote, look disabled, more often than not, there's a reason behind this, and hostility towards them will achieve nothing but causing more harm. Yep. Disability equals asexuality. This is one of the more frustrating ones in some ways. So, perhaps one of the most biggest misconceptions about disability is that disabled individuals do not have sex or pursue sexual relationships, which you can still, just to be clear, you can still be asexual and pursue sex, or you can have sex and pursue sexual relationships. It just can be for different reasons, and it might not be for the sexual part as much. People figure stuff out. There are people who might want friends with benefits. Someone they can feel safe with. But that being said, while some conditions make sex more complicated due to reasons such as pain, mobility, so forth, a disability is not a sentence to a life without sexual intimacy and pleasure. I would suggest that societal views on what sex is may be to blame for this idea. Sex can be and is much more than missionary penetration. Disabled folk don't mind or see you staring. Yeah, no, again, we are all guilty of being a little nosy at times. However, you'll not be the first or the last to be caught staring. This one's a bit complicated for me, because, like, I oftentimes either avoid eye contact or stare. It's difficult for me to do anything other than those two. So, like, but yeah, the majority of neurotypical people, if they're staring, it's for a different reason. So, can you imagine how hurtful or anxiety-inducing it is to be not even be able to go into a shop without people staring at you? Yes, I can. Or whispering to each other. It's also eugenics of disabled people shouldn't have kids type mentality. Yeah. Well, it may not cross your mind again. For the individual that catches you staring, it will haunt them. Disabled people are inspirational. It's not often not ill-intentioned. Healing disabled focus inspirational for merely existing often contributes to the sensationalism attached to disability, almost infantilizing people through applause for completing mundane tasks. Oh, chronic illness and disability are consistent and straightforward. Yeah, that's never how any of that is, obviously. As someone with chronic illness myself, no 2 days look the same. conditions flare up are often unpredictable. Time periods, episodes can vary from person to person. Treatment plans are not always linear, and recovery and improvement either. Yeah, it's just important to know those few things. So, Lil Uzi now using they them pronouns. So rapper Lil Uzi Vert will now use they them pronouns. The 20 min rapper who previously went by he him added the new pronouns to their Instagram bio on Sunday. According to Power 105.1, Lil Uzi made the change using Instagram's pronoun label feature, which allows people to add up to 4 pronouns in their bio. The social media platform recently added the feature as part of their effort to make the Instagram more inclusive. Lil Uzi came out with another surprise on Saturday when they dropped a new track, Space Cadet, on SoundCloud. Lil Uzi's decision to change their pronoun has led to another contentious discussion on the internet as some social media users push back against people who refuse to accept non-binary identities. As Blovedy previously reported, Slim Thug recently sat down with artist Big Freedia during an episode of College Hill Celebrity Edition to talk about using the proper pronouns when addressing people of various genders. I've never been able to kick it with someone like you. I need to know the proper pronouns, the rapper said. I'm gender fluid. I don't have a pronoun, Big Freedia replied. It's a new age for me, too, with my pronoun stuff. With my homies in New Orleans, who I kick it with and grew up with, I'm their bro. To my girls, I'm their sister. To my kids, I'm straight and gay. I'm their mom, my sister, my blood sister, and I'm her brother, and when she wants to call me her sister, I'm her sister. It really doesn't matter to me because I know who I am. Charles Barkley gets praised after vehemently speaking out against homophobia. I mean, some of the reason I like to do these stories is there's this attitude that black people are inherently more homophobic, and it's important to show that everything is complicated, and plenty of people, because of the changing of time, plenty of people change with it, regardless of skin color. And that's its own other thing. Anyways, Charles Barkley is receiving wide praise after speaking out against homophobia during an event at Harvey's Lake Tahoe Casino Hotel on the Nevada border. Barkley took the mic at the event, standing next to a pianist on stage, and unapologetically expressed his thoughts to the crowd, which responded with applause. If you're gay or trans, I love you. If anyone gives you any shit, tell him Charles says fuck you, the basketball legend says. I kind of love that. Barkley apparently has been long-standing supporter of LGBTQ people. Barkley specifically talked about standing up against North Carolina's bathroom bill in 2020, which prohibited trans people from using restrooms and other public facilities according to their gender identity. Former NBA forward, who now works as an analyst with TNT, said he told his boss at the network that he didn't want to take part in the NBA All-Star Game festivities if the event is being held in North Carolina. I hated the bathroom bill. So I went to my boss and said, "Hey, boss, I'm going to sit out of the All-Star game. I don't want to take away from the All-Star game, but I'm going to sit out." Yeah, yeah, and stuff like this is there's various levels of things that force like real change to occur, and what Barkley did right there was, I mean, it was a good thing. Um, so it's been almost 100 years since indigenous tribes in the north of Argentina. Did I just say Argentina? Argentina were violently attacked. Hundreds were killed in the Nepalpi massacre, as has now come to be known. In a unique trial for the South American country, prosecutors now say that the state committed crimes against humanity. This week marks the anniversary of the events, and the trial's verdict is seen as the first step for the country to reflect on racism and violence towards indigenous people. So, so 11. So this is BS. I mean, not the story is true. It's just 11 people were arrested in Poland and the UK for smuggling migrants from Belarus into the EU. Europol announced on Friday. Sort of like this. I think this article acts a bit like supporting the EU's or supporting the. Or I feel like this article would go against the railroad, the freeing slaves, whatever. The cross-border investigation uncovered a network of Syrian and Turkish nationals that recruited migrants from Iraq and helped them to cross into the EU on the eastern border. Investigators found that 662 migrants were smuggled by the criminal network. I mean, the fact that they had to pay to get through with the criminal network is its own problem, but okay. So if they're getting tons of money off of it, that's a dick move, but like, what were they supposed to do? A criminal network used Turkey as a transit country and logistical hub. Once in Turkey, migrants legally traveled to Moscow with tourist visas, from where they were transferred to the Belarusian capital Minsk or Grodno, near the borders of Lithuania and Poland. Charged between 500 and 1,000 euros to get from Poland to Germany. Last leg of the trip, often the migrants were transported in life-threatening conditions such as overcrowded vehicles. Later in the year, it turned into a crisis when thousands of migrants attempting to cross Belarus's border with the bloc. EU leaders accused Belarus of using migrants as a weapon in a quote-unquote hybrid attack to retaliate against sanctions, with Poland stating that it would not quote-unquote yield to blackmail over the crisis. According to Frontex, there were a record 8,000 illegal border crossings. Yeah, this is... I mean, people are generally running away from countries because they have to. Yeah. So, this study was not like super. This article was not super important. Probably shouldn't have had it. But Brazilian doctor arrested for allegedly raping pregnant woman during C-section. Cause, yeah, it's This is just this is probably a problem. Um, yeah, this is just a bad thing. Police are investigating the other patients that had surgery on that day to determine if they were also victims of rape by the doctor. Yeah, that's bad. Yeah, no, I'm really questioning that one news source. I might have to actually like get rid of it. I thought it was a good news source, but every time I look into it today, it's just been really bad. Actually, let me just go away. Anyways, El Salvador urged to introduce trans rights reforms and act on historic Supreme Court ruling. El Salvador is facing calls to urgently introduce a path to legal gender recognition and protection from discrimination for trans people. So, in February 2022, El Salvador's Supreme Court ruled that the Constitution prohibits discrimination based on gender identity and gave the legislature 1 year to create a system for trans people to change their names on their identity documents. To comply with international human rights standards, lawmakers are also being called to introduce a system for gender recognition. 5 months on, with no reforms announced, Human Rights Watch has released a report. Officials to create has released a report. Officials has released a report. Officials to create. It's just a sentence error somewhere. A simple, efficient procedure to allow trans people to accurately reflect their self-declared gender identity. El Salvador's Supreme Court has made patently clear that trans people have a right to their identity, says Christian Gonzalez Cabrera, LGBTQ rights researcher at Human Rights Watch, on Monday. Now the Legislative Assembly should comply with the ruling and ensure the rights of trans people. Yeah, without such legislation, trans people will continue to be disadvantaged in society, exacerbated by the generalized violence and discrimination they face in all aspects of life. So, European Commission sues Hungary over anti-LGBTQ law. So, the European Commission has launched legal action against Hungary over an anti-LGBTQ law. Oh, the law against promoting. So basically, a don't say gay type bill. And its refusal to renew the license of Club Radio, a broadcaster critical of the government. Friday's two lawsuits add to a long list of increasingly bitter standoffs between Hungary's hardline nationalist Prime Minister Viktor Orban and the liberal core of the EU over human rights and democratic standards. The European Commission today decided to refer Hungary to the Court of Justice of the EU over a Hungarian law which discriminates against people on the basis of their sexual orientation and gender identity. It also wait. Oh, there we go. It also sent a second lawsuit to the Luxembourg-based court over Budapest rejecting Club Radio's airwaves application. We address attacks to independent media via all tools we have, said European. So basically, Kluber, whose guests often criticize government policies and which now only broadcasts online, was forced off air more than a year ago. A government spokesperson said at the time that there was no issue with media freedom in Hungary and that it was not true the government had shut the station down. Yeah. Gay marriage is not recognized in Hungary, and only heterosexual couples can legally adopt children. Orban's government has redefined marriage as a union between one man and one woman in the constitution and limited gay adoption. The EU executive has withheld billions in aid to Hungary over disputes related to gay rights, as well as the independence of its media and courts. Shock. So, India's first trainee commercial pilot blocked from flying over hormone treatment. Adam Harry, who hopes to become India's first trans commercial pilot, is fighting injustice after being declared unfit to fly because of his medical transition. Harry told the BBC he's been flying since before coming out, and that initially his family was funding his studies in an aviation school in South Africa. However, when he came out as trans, they cut off contact. Nevertheless, the 23-year-old managed to get a private pilot's license, allowing him to fly as a hobby, and on returning to India, he received funding from the Kerala state government to continue training and secure his commercial license. But his career aspirations were halted in 2020 when India's Directorate General of Civil Aviation told him he was, quote, unfit to fly. Harry claims that he was declared unfit after a medical examination because he had started HRT. Knowing that he would need to be taking hormones for the rest of his life, he told the BBC, it was like choosing between my career and my gender identity. There are many pilots around the world flying airplanes in their identity, he added. I have Class 2 medical clearance from the South Africa Civil Aviation Authority, and they did not restrict me from taking HRT or undergoing physical transition. When Harry took the story to the press, it received attention around the world, and thankfully changes started to take place. India's Federal Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment got in touch with the aviation regulator, accusing it for discrimination. It ordered the regulator to update its policies and be more inclusive of trans employees. When Harry... Yeah, it being a temporary witness, an understandable breakdown for that. So, Iran blacklists U.S. officials for supporting a group they refer to as a terrorist group, MEK. So, the Iranian Foreign Ministry on Saturday has published a list of 61 current and former American officials who said have provided deliberate support of the Mujahideen-e-Khalq, a group that openly calls for the overthrowing of current Iranian establishment. One moment. Why do I not remember how to ban the person? Da 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 da. Mm-hmm. Huh. Well, apparently my brain is not working. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Jinx Diamond. I'm sorry, I'm bad about that. I believe. um, I know this is a shock, but I am I don't really care to be told that I will be choked out and so many. Or is distracted by popcorn? It's okay, Jinx Tiamat. Yeah. I'm afraid to click the messages because I don't want to accidentally reset them. But they're oh wait yeah so apparently the person SJW Killa 2009 wants me dead. According to those tweets, obviously banned, violates Twitter rules, and I'm afraid if you're gonna threaten to kill me, I'd prefer in person. Online feels so impersonal. Anyways, where was I? I got distracted by that. Um, yeah, so the Mujahideen who they a lot of members of the Mujahideen became the Taliban or whatnot, and the U.S. did support the Mujahideen very openly. So I can understand why the Iranian government might not want to associate with U.S. personnel. It's also a terrorist organization by the U.S. and EU, but was delisted more than 10 years ago after it promised to abandon violent operations. Now, violent operations since then. Republicans openly in favor of changing establishment in Iran. Yeah, and to be fair, I don't know enough about that particular organization and how they act now, but I know that aspects of that organization became Taliban and ISIS. So, like I said, I understand why Iran might want to blacklist U.S. officials who had supported that group. Iranian filmmaker Panahi sent to prison to serve 6-year sentence. He was apparently handed the sentence for supporting demonstrations and quote-unquote propaganda against the establishment in 2010. So, Iran's judiciary had said award-winning filmmaker Jafar Panahi, who was arrested earlier this month in Tehran, must serve a 6-year sentence that was originally handed to him in 2010. So, Panahi had received the sentence for supporting anti-government demonstrations, but after several months received a conditional release, although it was liable to be revoked at any time. He was arrested after he went to the prosecutor's office in Tehran to inquire about the condition of two fellow filmmakers who had been arrested days earlier. The other directors, Mohammad Rasulov and Mostafa Al-Ahmad, were arrested after they used their social media accounts to condemn the Iranian state's response to protests in May in the southwestern city of Abadan that formed after a building collapse. Um, so filmmakers won coveted Golden Bear Award Berlin Film Festival in 2015 for his film Taxi, and 2020 for There Is No Evil, in addition to the Best Screenplay Award at the Cannes Film Festival in 2018 for Three Faces. Um, so, yeah, it doesn't seem like there's an actual specific charge. It was just a filmmaker getting arrested for alleged charges, but no. Which that's a problem. Iraq bid to ban homosexuality will let government get away with murder. Iraq's government has announced plans to outlaw homosexuality, sparking anger and fear in the Iraqi LGBTQ plus community. Um, on the 8th of July, the Iraqi parliament began the process of collecting signatures to pass a law that will make homosexuality illegal once again. Iraq made homosexuality legal after Saddam Hussein was removed from power in 2003. However, there are items in the penal code that allow lawmakers to target LGBTQ plus citizens. Now, politicians want to double down on that by explicitly outlawing homosexuality. Aref al-Hamami, an MP from the state of Law Coalition, told Iraqi news agency it was agreed within the House of Representatives to collect signatures after returning to session to legislate a law prohibiting homosexuality in Iraq. Legislation of such a law will be reinforced by legal provisions that prevent homosexuality and the perversions associated with. This announcement was met with anxiety from Iraqi LGBTQ plus community members whose safety is already under threat in the country. According to the New Arab, queer Iraqis face beatings, torture, and in some cases murder just for being who they are. A report from the Human Rights Watch found that attacks on many LGBTQ plus people in Iraq were committed by police. That's not surprising. Government security forces and state-sponsored armed groups dedicated to hunting down and attacking them. The organization called for the government's end to torture, disappearances, summary killings, and other abuses based on sexual orientation. However, it seems that is not a priority for them. Activist and founder of the rights group with the best name, Iraqweer, Amir Ashur, posted on a thread describing disturbing ramifications for the anti-LGBTQ plus law would enable. While LGBTQ plus Iraqis have been the target of systematic killing campaigns and things are as bad as it gets, this law will allow the government to legally get away with murder, putting LGBT plus citizens and those advocating for us in greater danger, he wrote. This law will be a death sentence to the LGBTQ plus movement in Iraq, a movement that young advocates and organizations like Iraqweer have worked on building for 8 years, risking our lives and the lives of our loved ones. Yeah. So on brighter news, Nintendo. Nintendo announces it will recognize same-sex partnerships even though Japan doesn't. Yeah. Massively popular video game company giving queer employees a quote-unquote power-up in the fight for marriage equality. That's funny. Even though Japan doesn't legalize even though Japan hasn't legalized same-sex marriage, the Japanese video game company Nintendo has announced that it will extend marriage benefits to employees who are in same-sex partnerships. The company also said it would revise its policies to forbid outing or harassing employees over their LGBTQ identities. The Nintendo made the announcement in its annual corporate social responsibility report. The CSR report, the CSR, corporate social responsibility report. Oh yeah, the CSR report noted we introduced the partnership system in March 2021 as one initiative based on this philosophy. Although same-sex marriages are not currently recognized under Japanese law, this system ensures employees who are in a domestic partnership with same-sex partner have the same benefits as employees in opposite-sex marriage. The CSR report added that the company would also recognize common law marriages in the same way as legal marriages. Additionally, the company report stated that it will revise its policies regarding harassment to clearly prohibit discriminatory comments based on sexual orientation or gender identity, as well as disclosing someone's privately held sexual orientation against their will. Fans of the video game company have praised its move, particularly in a socially conservative country, even though the company has only ever introduced one out gay character in any of its video games. I mean, isn't there a non-binary character in one of the Pokemon games, new Pokemon games? Anyways, right now, Japan doesn't have non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ people. District Court in Osaka recently ruled that the country's same-sex marriage ban is constitutional. But as a result, LGBTQ people in Japan often faced inequities in employment, housing, education, and healthcare. Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice for things to be better. They're not. But at least when companies do something, people pay attention. So, Sweti Murakesi, an American citizen who has lived in Ukraine for the past 4 years, has been detained by Russian forces. The 35-year-old was arrested in June when he was staying in Kherson, a provincial capital in southern Ukraine that was captured by Russian forces. Speaking to the Times, the brother Saleh Murakesi said the American man was falsely charged with attending pro-Ukrainian protests. Sweti, a native of Rwanda, served 8 years in the U.S. Air Force before moving to Ukraine. The Air Force veteran who lived in Minnesota moved to Ukraine because he was attracted by the country's liberal Bitcoin regulations, the BBC reports. Sweti made several business trips to Ukraine before permanently settling in Kherson. Saleh said his brother, who received permission to call his family after being captured, told his loved ones that he is not injured. Sweti said also he's being held in the Donetsk People's Republic, a separatist territory in eastern Ukraine supported by Russia. His only crime was being American. The thing told the Times. So they said 2 of his brother's closest friends fled to Poland and Georgia after Sweti's arrest. They were very, very scared. Zilla said the Russians are using his brother as a pawn for their own propaganda purposes, and they may be treating him poorly because he's black. To other Americans, 27-year-old Andy Tyna, terrible with names, and 39-year-old Alexander Druka have been held captive since early June. They were captured after traveling from Alabama to join a Ukrainian volunteer unit. Russia-Ukraine war list of key events day 146. I am processing that not a good list. So not a good thing for me to break down. In that I don't know as much to break it down quickly. So Russia's #1 tennis player Daria Kasatkina bravely comes out as gay. Russia's top tennis player Daria Kasatkina has come out as gay and revealed she is dating Russian Olympic figure skater Natalia Zabianko. Kasatkina, 25, broke down in tears as she shared her truth in a lengthy YouTube interview with Russian vlogger Vitya Kravchenko on Tuesday. The world's #12 player, who is currently not living in Russia, then uploaded an adorable photograph of her and Zabiako together on Instagram. While she captioned it with a purple heart, Zabianko did the same on her page with a yellow love heart. Living in the closet is impossible, she told Kravchenko in Barcelona, Spain. Not for the long run, no. It's too hard, it's pointless. You'll be completely focused on that until you choose to come out. Living in peace with yourself is the only thing that matters, and fuck everyone else. For most high-profile sports people in Russia to come out as gay is a daring act, considering LGBTQ Russians face fierce discrimination. The federal government so-called gay propaganda ban outlaws the promotion of non-traditional sexual relationships to minors, but all but silencing the LGBTQ plus community in Russia. Russian deputies have since announced the plans to extend the ban to cover adults as well as young people. Daria said she knows this well and said she would never hold her girlfriend's hand in public. Judging by how things are going there, it will never be okay. So many subjects are taboo in Russia, some of them more important than ours. It's no surprise. The notion of someone wanting to be gay or becoming one is ridiculous. I think there's nothing easier in the world than being straight. Seriously, if there's a choice, no one would choose to be gay. Why make your life harder, especially in Russia? What's the point? It's important to talk about these things. It's important for young people to who have a hard time with society and need support. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully that person can have a good life. Sri Lanka marks 100 days of protest. This is over the economic crisis in Sri Lanka. Mainly youth-led mass protest movement over in Sri Lanka's worst ever economic crisis has hit 100 days. During the period, the protesters forced a president and a prime minister, both brothers from the powerful but now unpopular Rajapaksa clan, to resign, with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa even fleeing the country last week to escape the uprising. It was the first time in Sri Lanka's history that a serving head of the state had resigned. Gotabaya's elder brother and patriarch of the clan, Mahinda Rajapaksa, was forced to quit as prime minister in May after an attack on the main protest site in the capital, Colombo. Colombo, by his supporters led to violence throughout the island. Third brother resigned from his parliamentary seat and tried unsuccessfully to leave the country earlier in the month. Protesters blame them, who dominated the island's nation's politics for more than 2 decades, for the economic crisis, which saw people queuing, sometimes for days, for fuel, medicines, and other essentials. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, who had replaced Mahinda Rajapaksa, was declared acting president, tasked with formation of a new government. Anger against Wickremesinghe. Well, there are celebrations on today at Gotagogama, the sea-facing protest camp in Colombo. To mark the 100 days of protests, some people said they are aware their journey is not over yet. In a controversial move late Sunday, Wickremesinghe once again declared a state of emergency in the country in a bid to prevent protests during a parliamentary vote later this week to elect a new president. Sudden declaration of state of emergency is aimed at intimidating protesters. We have been protesting peacefully for 100 days, but there was no state of emergency. Then why now? We see this person is getting ready for oppression, but our struggle would not be oppressed by these actions. We have a democratic right to protest, and we will continue our struggle until we achieve our last demand. Protesters say out of their 6 key demands in the action plan declared on July 5th, only 1 has been achieved yet. Yeah. So, Thailand moves towards civil unions. Country looks set to be first Southeast Asian country to recognize same-sex partnerships, but gay marriage is also on the table. So, in July 3rd, hundreds of people marched through the streets of Thailand's second biggest city for its 4th ever Pride Parade before converging on the ancient gate where they danced and celebrated under a light drizzle. Thailand is poised to become the first Southeast Asian nation to grant some form of legal recognition to same-sex partnerships, although it is not yet clear whether this will be in the form of civil unions or full marriage equality. Both proposals passed Parliament on the first reading, but they will need approval from various other levels of government before becoming law. Yeah, so it's complicated, but hopefully they can work it out, because Thailand has been ruled by a military-backed government since a coup in 2014 that removed the democratically elected government led by that one party. Elections in 2019 were heavily skewed in favor of the military, which directly appointed all 250 members of the Senate, which selects the Prime Minister in conjunction with the the elected House of Representatives. so stuff's complicated in Thailand, but hopefully, once again, just I always hopefully good stuff happens. I'm skeptical it will. Togolese army admits to killing children mistaken for quote-unquote jihadists. The 7 children were killed while returning from celebrations of the Muslim holiday Eid al-Adha late on July 10th. The Togolese army has admitted to killing 7 children July 10th in a blast in the village of Magba in Tone Prefecture in its northernmost region, Savannah, or the region. Wow, that's weirdly worded. Near the border with Burkina Faso. In the statement issued Thursday, the military revealed that the youngsters aged 14 to 18 were hit by air raids at dawn after they were mistaken for what they say was a group of jihadists who entered the country on the basis of intelligence gathered. The admission comes to light after an investigation launched following the deaths of the 7 children killed as they were returning home late at night from some celebrations of the Muslim holiday Eid al-Adha. 2 others were also wounded. At the time, the Togolese army said the blast caused the death of youngsters, but did not elaborate on the cause of the explosion. So since June 2013, the region has been under state of emergency as part of to overcome activity of armed groups spilling over from Burkina Faso, the epicenter of conflict in the Sahel. In May, 8 soldiers were killed and 13 others wounded at a security outpost in the locality. I'm not going to pronounce that. In the Savannah region by unknown government. Last November, security forces repelled a similar attack. But this is still reckless. It's incredibly reckless and problem. Under the pretext they thought they were terrorists, and can they tell us how they identify a terrorist? This person tweeted, "What does a terrorist look like?" Yeah, that's the summation of the problems. You can have problems in a country, but like seriously, killing children in a bomb because they might be terrorists sounds incredibly bad. So, quote-unquote gay tests are still victimizing men across the world. In countries where same-sex sexual activity is outlawed, law enforcement frequently forces men accused of being gay to undergo invasive and degrading forced anal examinations. Dear God. So-called gay tests have been used by anti-gay governments and authorities to inflict immense physiological and trauma to victims for decades. I think psychological trauma to victims for decades, maybe. From Egypt to Uzbekistan, Uganda to Saudi Arabia, forced anal tests are persecuting gay men in more than a dozen countries around the world, all with either the explicit or implicit support of governments. In countries where same-sex sexual activity is outlawed, law enforcement officials have been documented forcing men accused of consensual same-sex relations to undergo invasive and degrading forced anal examinations. The flawed quote-unquote evidence from these unscientific tests are then used by legal authorities to convict people of homosexual conduct. Forced anal tests are tantamount to rape, Peter Tachel said. They often inflict pain and are a form of torture and inhuman and degrading ill treatment. These probes are not an accurate diagnosis of homosexuality, since many gay men do not have anal sex and some straight men have relaxed anal sphincters. While human rights groups are working to end the practice, it's an uphill battle. Countries that use anal tests are mostly highly repressive, homophobic regimes that ignore human rights and international pressure. Yeah. It's awful. Yeah, no, it's unscientific and just horrible, horrible stuff. So, widespread rail access failings revealed in regulators' new report. So, an audit commissioned by the Office of Rail and Road found multiple failings by rail operators in the information they provided about station accessibility on their own websites and the information provided by National Rail Inquiries. The Office of Rail and Road audited 32 stations run by one train operator and found incomplete or inaccurate information about step-free access for 13 of the stations, which I assume means that 13 of the stations did not have ramps. And so only people who could walk up and down steps were allowed in and out. Well, not allowed in and out. Indirectly allowed in and out because, yeah. So, with no information about meeting points at all but one of the stations and problems in 5 other areas across multiple stations. Other train operators had gaps in information provided about staffing hours, with 16 operators failing in this area, and the availability of seating in the station, 17 operators failing. So about 1 in 3 auditors recorded inconsistencies after visiting unstaffed or partially staffed stations, while almost 1 in 4 found inconsistencies at staffed stations. Among the issues they recorded was a failure to provide assistance, an assistance meeting point at the station, the failure to provide clear information point at larger stations, and problems with obtaining assistance at unstaffed or partially staffed stations through the station's help point. So the audits carried out by the Research Institute for Disabled Consumers found problems with communications, signage, information, and support around accessibility. And another report found even more problems. So basically, there's a lot of a lack of accessibility in rail stations. I feel like this is a topic I've talked about before, but it's good that they have documentation. That does help for making the next step. So, passenger assistance at Heathrow is quote unquote an absolute shambles, says cabin crew. So, I know airlines being inaccessible. This is a shock, an incredible shock. There have been a series of publicized failings this year at both Gatwick and Heathrow and along with other UK airports. Every single flight, you wait for anything from half an hour to an hour and a half. People are missing their connections. Before the pandemic, he said disabled passengers arriving at Heathrow and BA might have waited 20 minutes or half an hour now and again. but he said he believed that since air travel returned to more usual levels of activity as pandemic restrictions have eased, there have been not enough staff working for Wilson James. He said it's extremely uncommon to see the door of the aircraft open and to have someone there waiting to provide assistance. Another cabin crew member said disabled passengers were missing their connecting flights all the time because of delays. 9 out of 10 cases, you open the door and there will be no one around, but and you'll be chasing them. I'm not sure it's just a staffing issue. She said in the last 3 or 4 months has been really bad with service provided to disabled passengers. Pretty disgraceful. I'm pretty sure there's another airplane story we've reported on in with regards to British Airlines, because there's been numerous other problems that have been talked about, and obviously disabled people are the first people to get negatively affected by this stuff. So secret reviews into DWP deaths more than double in 3 years. So they show how the Department for Work and Pensions started 43 internal process reviews into deaths between July 2019 and June 2020. 59 from July 2021 to June 2020, or July 2020 to June 2021, and 38 in the last year, a total of 140 in 3 years. A previous Freedom of Information request by the Disability News Service shows this compares with 17 reviews carried out in 2016, 29 in 2017, 18 in 2018, a total of only 64. The new figures were released by Ministry for Disabled People, Chloe Smith, in response to a written parliamentary question from Labour's Debbie Abrahams, who has pushed repeatedly for public inquiry into deaths linked with DWP's actions. DWP suggested this week that the rise was because it had, quote-unquote, broadened the range of circumstances where a review is carried out, but it has so far declined to say when it made this change or exactly what changes were made to its guidance. And given the level of stress, death, and paperwork caused by the DWP recently, this is not surprising that there are atypical problems. The scandal that the bereaved families are not made aware of or involved in these investigations, and that we are denied data on the true scale of their deaths. So, IPR figures were released following the publications of new research which shows how decades of welfare reform and DWP failings are linked to hundreds, possibly thousands of suicides and other deaths of disabled people. The draft version of the Deaths by Welfare timeline exposes how DWP has alerted more than 40 times over the past 30 years to life-threatening systemic flaws in its disability benefit system by academics, coroners, and its own researchers. IPRs are not released publicly, and grieving families are even told that they're not even told that they're taking place. They were initially called peer reviews, and DWP only started collecting them in February 2012. Britain's been going further and further down the tube. So, trans athlete Fallon Fox blasts BBC for being transphobic after it apologizes for platforming her. Fallon Fox condemned the BBC. So Fallon Fox, an American retired mixed martial artist, appeared on BBC Radio 4's Today program in June to discuss the world governing body of swimming effectively banning trans women from the highest level of women's international competition. But Fair Play for Women, an anti-trans pressure group, took issue with this. Fox should never have been booked and on-air apology is required, the group said in a letter to BBC bosses, according to The Telegraph. Fair Play for Women cited a 2020 tweet from Fox 46. In its complaint, the tweet concerned Erica Newsom and Tamika Brents, both MMA fighters, who said Fox should not be able to compete against cis women. Both lost to Fox when they did face off against one another in the octagon. For the record, I knocked 2 out. One woman's skull is fractured, the other not. But yeah, I mean, Fallon Fox isn't even like a remarkable fighter. Yeah. And the injury is common. But Fallon Fox vows to never talk to the transphobic British media again. Fox has long stressed that no, she did not break Brent's skull during the fight. She fractured Brent's orbital bone. Yeah, that's the part. So I've got a scar on my orbital bone because my head smacked into the front of a vehicle when I was hit by it as a pedestrian. It's probably not very visible anymore. And I don't have a good camera at the moment. But there's I can't even remember which eye off the top of my head. I think it's somewhere around here. It's one of the two eyebrows area, and there's I have a scar somewhere on my chin. But like that's common for if you get smacked in the face by something. But yeah, orbital bone, third most common injury in MMA because you are punching people in the face. She's never broken a person's skull yet. Yeah, it's just BBC is problematic. But I must finish because obviously Fox said that BBC apologizing for having her on is fucked up, which it is. I mean, she didn't say that directly, but yeah, it's just BBC tends to platform transphobes and not trans people. But the most important story is coming up. More important than everything. I'm kidding, it's not important. But a cat has been saved from London fire thanks to a new pet oxygen mask. So, a new oxygen mask for animals has been used for the first time to rescue a pet cat from a house fire in London. Last week, the London Fire Brigade were called to the address in Paddington, where they successfully rescued 2 pet cats from the ground floor, provided by non-profit organization Smoky Paws. The masks come in 3 sizes and can be used on dogs and cats, as well as smaller animals such as rabbits, snakes, and mice. Prior to the introduction of specialist equipment, firefighters rescuing animals that had inhaled smoke were forced to improvise to try to revive them. Station officer Nathan Beebe, who was called to the scene earlier this month, praised the equipment, having something specially designed designed made so much difference as the mask is properly sealed around the animal's muzzle and all the oxygen is going to their lungs, he said. Being able to administer oxygen via properly fitted mask in the early stages will improve the chances for animals who have been saved from fires. Since 2019, London's firefighters have responded to over 100 incidents involving dogs, cats, or other pets. Dave O'Neill, the brigade's Deputy Assistant Commissioner for Operational Policy, said a firefighter's priority is always to save a human life, but we know how precious people's pets are to them. We also know owners will put their own lives at risk by trying to return to a burning building to rescue them. Masks are a part of a pilot scheme and will be carried on fire engines in Battersea, Paddington, Richmond, and Hammersmith. If the trial is a success, the kit will be deployed to stations across the city. And that, lovely people, is the news. L what? Jinx Tiamat. What means you by L? Oh no, now it's super dark. Wait. Sorry, it's one of those things where I changed the camera lighting a bit here to try to deal with it. Ah! There, you happy? I breathed. But birds need kits too. Yeah, although those ones might work on birds. I'm not sure. But yeah, with that, I will see you all later while I'm playing League, or I don't know. Something. Words. I can words. Anyways, have a wonderful night. Take care of yourself. And next week, I will be in my apartment that I'm usually in, which has much better lighting. Until then, just you matter and do what you can.
Justice is indivisible. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Sex and race, because they are easy, visible differences, have been the primary ways of organizing human beings into superior and inferior groups, and into the cheap labor on which this system still depends.
No, you all tell me to go and hide my tail between my legs. I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all?
We want no more segregation. We will accept no more discussion of segregation. And I would appreciate it if you would stop shaking your head in agreement when I don't think you understand what we are talking about.
Freedom is merely privilege extended unless enjoyed by one and all.
All we are doing with this bill is allowing two people who love each other to have that love recognised by way of marriage. That is all we are doing.
I speak not for myself, but for those without voice can be heard. Those who have fought for their rights. their right to live in peace.
Sometimes, especially in this body, I feel as though if Christ himself walked through these doors and said what he said thousands of years ago, he would be maligned as a radical and rejected from these doors.